just going private for now.
Sure.
Cool. So welcome. 1st of February, Q1. And this is our APAC EMEA orchestration demo. So Graham, over to you.
Yep. So first thing I kind of wanted to demo was the fact that the release environments project is now able to actually create a release environment. I'll share my screen, use desktop, hopefully this works. I have a merge request here that is simply just adding one file to create a new environment, 15-7-stable environment, running 15.7.4. I'm so devastated because when I looked at this and was looking at this whole setup about an hour ago, I realized that this is actually possibly broken for multiple environments. So this demo actually may not work, but I'm going to drop this in the chat if I can find it. Hold on. Chat. If someone is able to, if someone besides me is able to approve that, because I don't think I can merge it until approval. Yep. So I actually suspect this will fail, but we'll give it a go. And the reason it's going to fail is each installation installs its own copy of Cert Manager to do certificate setup. But of course, it's all done by Kubernetes custom resource definitions, which can't be installed multiple times. And so they're clashing at the moment. So this might fail if it tries to do that. So we'll give it a go, see how it goes. It's not an unsolvable problem. It would take me about half a day to whip up.
Approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll see how this goes. But you can see here that if we look at the, let's look at the changes. So it's creating this new file from scratch. If we look at the pipeline at the moment, so this is the not merged pipeline. We're just, creating the environment. We're triggering the deploy. It just does a diff of the environment. So this is telling us what it is going to do, not what it will do. Yep, so it's just going to create all this stuff, very boring, which will create the environment. I will start the merge train. Hopefully this will work, but unfortunately I suspect it won't because of this conflicting, in trying to install CRDs multiple times is not going to work. So I'll need to just sit down and tweak that so that we're not doing that somehow. We can see the merge train. This would be the pipeline that's actually, so we are doing the deploy on the merge train. So we should see, this will slowly take a little bit of time, but we should see this actually go through an attempt to deploy in the environment. As I said, it might not work, but we'll see. Probably close this. I can probably speed these up, some of this stuff up. Some of these tasks don't need to run.
What's this step roughly doing?
These two steps. So this one, we're validating the environment models we have in the repository against the JSON schema for them. So, and this is just Renovate basically validating its configuration. So this is just the standard Renovate setup to keep our things up to date. And this is validating that the models we have in the repository match the schema. I haven't sat down yet, but I want to sit down probably more towards the ends of this epic and document this out. Some of the, there's implementation pieces, but basically the ideas that we're starting to look at behind this as well. So I kind of think of the release environments were, obviously we're very focused on the outcome and what it's giving us right now, but I do believe it's got some interesting, the way we're putting it together at the moment, I think has a lot of reuse in other areas, which I think is interesting. It's got this environment model. So we define the environment model that we're using. We then pass the model to this orchestrator, which actually says, okay, you want an environment running these versions, I will implement this XYZ. So at the moment, it's just doing a Helm install, but that conceivably could be something else. And we talked about like things like we could use Omnibus, we could do an Omnibus install, but it's that model is it's that model being separated from the actual implementation of the model, which I do feel is important, especially for us to start to understand how pieces become replaceable and how we interact with other teams, both like within delivery and outside of delivery, for us to be able to say, well, at the end of the day, this is the model of what we want. How you implement it, whether it's system or reliability or someone else entirely, becomes a lot easier because at the moment, especially with the Kubernetes deployment stuff, we talk so much about implementation, whereas really we just want to be able to define what we want clearer, and then how that's actually implemented becomes more of an implementation detail. Oh, did I click the wrong one? Why is this? Maybe I haven't set this up to merge on the merge train yet. Maybe this is my bad. Maybe this actually is doing it on main. I still have that yet to do. So that's probably why I have to wait for the one on master to actually apply the environment. So this is just on the merge train, this is just doing a repeat of the diff, making sure everything's fine. Hopefully it's a little bit slow at the moment as well. The jobs take a little bit longer than is necessary, because in every part of the CI job, we're installing all the tools, like we're installing Google Cloud and cloud tools and everything over and over. We've got an issue open, which is basically just, there's a lot of these issues I got open now, which are just like backstage improvements. Like we should use a Docker image with everything pre-installed. We should, we should add renovate, which we've done now. We should tweak some of the settings to make things easy to follow. Just those kind of pieces which don't change the outcome, but just change the implementation to make things a little bit quicker, a little bit easier to follow, and things like that. So as I said, I do apologize. It's probably taking longer than it should be. It really should be. Once we switch to having a Docker image that we can run in CI with all the tools pre-installed, it should be just straight into deploying. It shouldn't have to do all this. Scroll down. So this is once again doing a diff against the environment. And even this is downloading the whole Helm chart again and things like that. So it's by no means the most efficient method of doing this. I'll make this a bit bigger as well, probably. But this isn't really the pipeline we're interested in.
I do have a question while we are waiting. Sure. So I noticed that we provide the chart version as part of the environment file that you were showing us. But what I'm thinking is that the chart version comes with configurations, right? So every chart versions provides certain configuration values. So, and I couldn't, or maybe I didn't see, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that you are not showing us the configuration. It seems like the configuration is coming from the system, not from the environment file, right? So
yes,
I'm wondering, do we want to give environments the control over the version, or do we want to have something like, this is the versions that we know is working with the environment's work that we're doing, and if you want to change it, it basically it may not work because the chart is different and may require different configuration values.
So are you saying like we shouldn't be explicitly asking for the chart version? Like, are you saying we should just like?
Yeah, it's a question about this. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So should we just say this is the supported version, so you don't have to provide
to do that,
because this is what we know, and the values we provide are based on this, or do you see reason for allowing to actually specify?
No, it's a perfectly good question. So I think you're right. So I think ultimately, it's probably come off the fact that thinking about GitLab.com, we don't pin chart version to software version at all. That's not saying that's the right or wrong thing, but I actually do agree with you. I think probably at the moment, so the reference of what version of the chart we use is a Git reference. So, I mean, what we probably should do is I should change that to be, I actually didn't know this either. Part of another piece of this is I didn't actually know they did stable branches on CNG. So I think probably what needs to happen is, well, two things, I think. We can make the version file, because obviously we get to define it and we can implement it in however we want. It is an interesting question. Do we have the version you supply one version, and then we can extrapolate all the versions for the components, including the charts out of that? Or do we want people to have to explicitly provide the version, even if it's the same number over and over for each component, which then also might give them the control to say, I actually want to change the version of one component, what have you. I guess that's kind of the piece. But yeah, as in terms of like taking away, taking away control of the chart version and automatically implying it, I think is probably not a bad idea either. We could probably look at doing that. I think in general, actually, the bigger question is, yeah, like how much control. Oh, well, two pieces. If it would be great, and I definitely could look at like if you don't provide something, we should be able to infer it for you. Like I don't want, I just provide the version once and then you just tell me what it is. But still also I think having the option to be like, I want to specify all the different values, I want this exact different one for each one. I think it would be good to maintain the flexibility there. But I do think defaulting, like being able to say you don't have to specify everything and we'll default to something saying that makes sense for you, what you're trying to do, I do think makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So here's the an actual deploy job. And once again, we're probably going to have to wait a while it installs all the tools and see if it actually deploys. So while we're here, I am taking advantage of the GitLab environments feature to actually, take advantage, like basically more or less track the environments we're having. The release environment itself, I'll get rid of. That's basically for the cluster, all of the cluster tools we install. It's kind of like a fake release. We don't really need that. But you can see here, if this button works, it takes us to our current environment that we've stood up. We should have the 15.7 environment appear there, assuming this works, which once again, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So that through this, what I'm hoping that people who do outside of the team, like developers, if they start having to interact with this a bit more, I want to try and push these kind of features and user experience for them to understand how to access the environments just by basically using the standard GitLab features, right? And just saying, oh, just go to the environments, see the environments, click the button, there's my environment kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. That makes me think actually, Graham, like where does the stop environment step fit in our process? Is that something we're going to need to remember to actually go and clean stuff up?
Yeah, so me and Myra, I think we're talking about this, but yeah, so we were thinking about that. So I think let's talk about the 3 monthly kind of the initial thing we're talking about here. I think what's going to happen is and actually me and Skarbek had a chat about this as well, where we were like, so Skarbek and I were like, so at the moment, we can make these environments with any names we want, by the way. Do we want to call them explicitly the version numbers they are, or do we just want to call them, like something generic that we could keep upgrading as the version numbers shifted forward? We just have like release 1, 2, and 3, and we know that 1 is the current, and 1 minus. And I was like, it's definitely an idea, but I feel like around the time of the monthly release, it becomes really confusing when one environment is like changes from one version to another. So I like the fact that we keep the environments solidly with their name. So, yes, that is definitely the 15.7, the 15.6. And so what me and Mara were talking about is, yeah, right. I haven't implemented it yet, but we are going to have the whole stop environment button and probably a way to decommission the environment out of the Git repository and everything and make that all work nicely, which isn't impossible. It's probably a day or two's worth of work. And I think what we decided is in the process for the new monthly release, it will likely be something like set up the new release, like you're starting 15.10, say, or whatever, create the new release environment for 15.10 and now decommission the environment for 15.7 or whatever the old one is, right? Like it will be at the moment, probably a couple of easy manual steps, but as we look at automating all our pieces, we can just automate that so that
can we start by automating from scratch? Because I'm afraid of adding another checklist I mean,
I'm not against that either.
Yeah, if totally. The version name, if we keep the version name strict, like this is release and that's the version, it's very simple by having this as part of the release as an automation, right? It can even be scheduled pipeline, because when we create the milestone, we already have all the things that create the milestones and things like that, so we can probably try to hook on top of that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think we're just spitballing as like an easy way to like remember to do it, but I'm not against those ideas. Like, just automate it. As I said, it's pretty simple, right? We just know the number, just put it in.
I mean, I'm also
okay. Old one, drop out.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm finished.
I would say I'm also okay if we want, to take the safer road and say the automation is creating the merge request and assigning this to release managers, so they will receive the ping and say, okay, this is actually deleting the right environment, see the diff and apply the thing. That's okay. But so that's my thing. There was something that you mentioned before, given that we are still waiting here, that I want to grab your brain on, which is stable branches on Helm charts. So something that I realized recently that I still have to write an issue about is that we, in the past, we spent a lot of time in building auto deploys for charts. So for Helm charts, never using that. Never using that, but it's also broken. So what I realize is that every time we create something, a new tag, we are creating the auto deploy branch for Helm, and we are not putting anything on top of that because that integration was designed in a different way. So we were triggering a build on the auto deploy branch saying, this is an auto deploy branch. I am the release tools. Please infer the versions, because they have that very complex version things. Like, so basically the logic was all already inside Helm charts. So we decided do it on Helm charts and self-commit. This thing is no longer generating a pipeline. We receive an error every time we say there are no jobs for this thing. So we never noticed because we never used.
Yeah.
And this is creating complexity also because we are creating those things that are useless. We don't track them on release metadata as well. So if we don't have a plan of using the charts, because we are basically not using the chart, that's it boils down to us not really using the chart, but just removing all the things that we're not using, right? So probably we should just remove it. It makes no sense to keep creating those branches, not using them, sending a trigger that is doing nothing, and removing all these references from release tools code base, because
that makes sense.
As it is pointless, right?
So just so I kind of fully understand, what do we use instead? Like, how do we get the versions?
We are using SHA, I think, from Graham's knows better than me. So
so I guess the thing is, like, the version of the Helm chart we deploy is completely independent of auto deploy. So what we do is once a week, I've got a very simple script running on a schedule that just goes, what's the latest version of the SHA of the Helm chart? And to be fair, actually, I don't even check if that pipeline is green on it. I just check what the latest one is and the latest commit, and then just open a bunch of merge requests. And then typically me on a Monday APAC morning, I'll just go through and just merge them through as is. I think we've talked about this before. I think auto deploy for the chart is definitely something that we want. But I think the problem we have with auto deploy of the GitLab chart is not technical. Like, we could fix the problems you were talking about, Alessio. We could probably pass that through into the repo, like it would all work. It's more, how confident are we that people who are merging changes into the Helm chart understand this is affecting GitLab.com? How do they understand like what changes that might have on GitLab.com? I think that's the thing that we're still kind of missing, is that confidence that, I know. And like an example for a way we could build confidence is in the repo for the Helm chart, we could have a CI job that uses the Helm configuration for GitLab.com to show, if you merge this is the changes that would have to GitLab.com. Maybe like it changes the configuration of Sidekick or something. And then that way they could be, oh, look, this would change something on .com and this might not be what we want. So therefore they could evaluate merge requests and stuff a bit more comprehensively.
Yeah, I was going to actually mention this, right? One of the biggest fear was the potential breakage of GitLab.com because of changing parameters or things like that, because there was no real backward compatibility set in stone at the point of the development. On the other hand, if I remember correctly, the only reason why we developed that complex script to self-commit, self-upgrade Helm charts was actually to not infer component versions on Kate's workload. So the only thing that the thing was doing is given a auto deploy version, figure out all the images. But this is something that we already solved elsewhere, so we can completely remove the thing and deploy from master. I mean, if you want to go very aggressively on having auto deploy there, so there's no real need because we are always overwriting the image versions. I think this is correct, Grims, right? So we are never using image versions provided by the charts themselves.
Correct. Yep.
So all that work is pointless in that sense, right? Because we are not, we don't care, right? So we have another way to figuring out the images version. So yeah, we can stop using that and goes in the direction that you were describing, which is, are the changes merged into the chart compatible with GitLab.com deployment, or will this break something?
Yeah, it used to be a lot worse. Like even a year and a half ago, we'd see a lot of things coming down through chart changes that question or had risk. I just anecdotally, it's been really good. Like I think, whatever the changes they're doing, it's like we're not seeing like changes come through from the charters. It seems a lot more stable. But we still should have that visibility. So then it's really just when they're evaluating the merge request, they can have the ability to go, well, if we merge this, what would this do for GitLab.com? Because I think the people especially work on it, they can look at those like .com pipelines and they know what they're looking at. So they know to go, oh yes, that's going to change that configuration. That's fine. Or no, that's not fine. In the interest of keeping things moving, I don't know why this is taking so long. I don't know why GitLab CI is not printing anything and what have you. We should actually see the deployment start. It started, but it's just sitting here waiting. I might put a pause on this, and because I want to have some time to just talk through the next agenda item I have. Oh, I put one piece here.
It's failing because of the cert manager, I suppose, right? So
yeah, but it shouldn't be. It should bomb out straight away. It should go, oh, I can't install that. It already exists. So I'm surprised it's not doing that. It's just kind of hanging, like it's actually trying to do some work. Just check that it's not. See, it actually is creating. I think it's actually working. It's just taking its sweet time. So 2 more things. Quick chat about. First one is I put an MR up on the GitLab org GitLab repo itself, which is basically trying to build out the interface that when you commit to a stable branch, it will actually build the images. So there's three parts to this we want to happen. We want the commit to be committed to stable branch. We want to build the images. We want to deploy them into the release environment. And then we want to eventually run QA in it. So I've been working obviously on the release environment stuff that, despite some problems is making progress. Now I'm focusing on getting the images for the release environment. I have an issue to discuss this, so let me talk about.
I'm really excited about this because this basically means having RCs for the stable branches. So every single commit will generate an RC.
Yep. So sorry, a little bit disorganized. So the big part is I've got an issue there. I'm pretty sure you chimed in, Alessio. I talked to distribution about it, is where do we build the images? So there's 2 things that came out of that. I think, Alessio, you pointed out we can only build on dev.gitlab.org. Distribution were trying to push us towards making another mirror of our, like forking the repo, making our own. I think their concern is us building more stuff, puts more stuff in their package repositories. I wouldn't say the word pollutes, but it just makes a lot more stuff in their repositories, which I think they were trying to avoid. So they were trying to isolate us from that. I'm not sure if we want to make our own mirror. They also suggested we use they've got a mirror specifically for building temporary packages for review apps in the GitLab pipeline. And that is what I've started with as a first iteration. So I've got a merge request up. It needs a lot of work because I'm trying to understand the CI setup, and GitLab.com repo is, sorry, the GitLab.com GitLab repo is, wow, it's, yeah, makes me really not like YAML much by the end of it. But I think I've got something that kind of looks like what we want. So definitely interested in Alessio, yourself, Myra, and everyone else's kind of perspectives on, does this look right? Does this, so all I'm trying to do at the moment is I just want, when we merge to a stable branch, I want to get CNG pipeline built. It's using this CNG mirror. I'm not convinced long-term that is the best repo, because I don't know, I haven't looked at how often they prune the images from that, because we're going to need images perhaps up to 3 months old or what have you. So I do also want to continue the discussion with distribution, but I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not quite sure how to continue the discussion with distribution to basically say, look, you know, this is what we're doing. We need a stable place to build these stable branch images. There might still be some confusion about what the purpose of these are, because realistically, as you mentioned, they're kind of like RCs before we actually do an RC. Yep. They're not just like random builds kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of my another discussion point is, are we happy? Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I was going to say that if we are going to use, I mean, I suppose we are, our own registry, the registry that is shipped with GitLab, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure, it is possible to specify retention policies for images based on a regular expression of the image name or the tag as well.
Okay.
So it should be possible to say something like whatever is with stable in there. I mean, whatever is the regex name, just keep it for 4 months, right? And then that makes sense. The other hand, this will not prevent someone to run a pipeline on that stable branch and create an out of policy image. But in any case, I mean, we're gonna that image will stay there for 4 months, 3 months, and then will be pruned.
And I think that's the other part of this is understanding. I think I'm doing it right, but once again, could be good to check, is in theory, what you would want is if you do run a pipeline again on a particular SHA in GitLab or GitLab, you want the output to be the same, right? Like you could run it 6 times and maybe you're triggering their build 6 times, but the ultimate result is 6 things that come out the same. I think that's, and hopefully that is the end result.
I was also going to mention for you, if you have questions, problems with GitLab or GitLab pipelines, which are very complex, I think your best person to reach out is someone from engineering productivity. I would say, given your time zone, maybe Lin.
Okay,
Lin
that's helpful.
Yeah, because he is in Taiwan, so maybe, I don't know how is the difference with you, but maybe it overlaps a bit more than, I don't know, Remy, which is in France, right? So
right.
Just to kind of give an overview then of when we are creating these images, are we saying, is there one image per stable environment? So would we end up with a 15.7 stable environment image, and that's the one image, and that ends up being the release candidate? Or are we creating multiple images as we go through the prep for the patch?
Every commit creates a new one.
Every commit, yeah. Because the goal would actually be to build, deploy, and QA on every commit.
Every commit, yeah. And then when we go through then the patch prep process, then there's a point we tag and we create the actual RC. Because I think that might be getting that sort of super clear in front of distribution might help on like, you know, in a sense, like the early ones are kind of close to review apps, right? In that they're quite frequently created. In a way, they're short-lived, right? Because not always, but often the next commit will come in.
Yeah, but will it come? That's the point, right? So
who knows?
I mean, if we are thinking about 10 picks, right, as a reference, we do patches release every, say, 10 things, right? So if we're spreading them through a milestone.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely that we are going to merge more than one at the same time.
Downtime. So this is
Like that's
this
the
is
difference
change.
between what we are doing
Yeah.
right now, right? So everyone now thinks it's the patch release, everyone is an accumulation branch, and then all it happens at one time. We are moving away from this. That's the big benefit of these things, right? Just gonna say, every single thing gonna be tested when it's ready, and everything and if your work is done, is ready ahead of time, you're done.
Yeah.
And we're going to make sure, like I've already done it in the release environment stuff, but I'll make sure in the GitLab repo as well. We want to do some locking. We want to make sure our locking is correct so that if two people merge onto a stable branch, they each get their own patch, deploy, and QA in isolation, right? So it's like I merge my fix onto a stable branch. You 5 minutes later merge yours. You have to wait until the QA is green from mine before we test yours, so that way we actually say, oh, the environment did break or it failed QA. We know exactly which commit. And I think that's the big key as well, is there's no longer hunting down if QA fails through the 10 commits. It'll be it's on your exact merge request, and the QA failed right then, so we know exactly what it is. And potentially we can start doing things like actually getting them just to revert it out if it becomes too much of a hassle, or we can use merge trains if we want to try and drop people out and things like that. But that's obviously a little bit more complicated.
This is going to be a real challenge, and I am afraid that there is no feature in the product to support this workload. This is something that I was personally looking into when I was testing for the Terraform thing. So we don't have a way to guarantee that jobs are executed in order, in commit order. We have the opposite, which is you can say that if something can be outdated by a more recent one.
Yes. Yep.
So we have everything except that, right? So you can say this is locked, so only one at a time can run, and having no control over who is running. That's one option. The other one is this is
the latest
outdatable. So if something more recent is running, cancel everything. And I think it also cancel ongoing run. I'm not sure. That's important to verify, because
I think it does. Yeah.
If you're in the middle of a deploy, you don't want this to cancel. So, but what I was looking into is actually the opposite, which is give me a ordered execution. And this is not this is not part of how runners pick up jobs. So it's very likely that it will run in order. But
yes, right. No guarantee. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I should keep that in mind. We should keep that in mind as well. Totally. Hopefully, at least to start with, we're not getting a lot of collisions, so it's not an insurmountable problem. But yeah, we should think about that, because really we do want that. If 6 people merge in order, we actually probably want to deploy, like package, deploy, and test in that order, so we do know, oh yes, it was this commit, and it just makes things a little bit less confusing for people. But we can see how it goes. So the deploy finally did finish. It did fail, unfortunately, and it failed on GitLab pages, which is what I expected, because cert manager stuff was not doing correct. Bit of a shame. So maybe next demo I'll actually demonstrate it working. So yeah.
Good
so
progress,
I think
I know you're saying, oh, I failed, but it's good to see it. Getting close. It's good to see the pipelines.
It's funny because it's failing for such a silly reason. Like don't like custom resource definition stuff is annoying. One of the few annoying things in Kubernetes. Like, it's just silly. And in fact, I can switch to. It's actually an interesting piece as well, philosophically thinking about it, is so we don't care. Or actually, this is good. I'm wary of the time, but this is another little interesting discussion point about all of this kind of stuff. We in delivery, I wouldn't say we don't care. We don't explicitly care about things that we package as part of our packages that are not our components, right? Like cert manager, which we do for Omnibus. So all of these things we do for Omnibus, Nginx, right? Like all of these things, we like bundle it all up. I mean, Redis and things like that, like they're all bundled there. But I think distribution obviously drives that, right? If there's a problem with it, they fix it, they pack and so in these release environments, we are just taking that software as well, that whatever the version they're running, we're installing and running that. not even sure where I'm going with this. It's not an insurmountable problem, but it is going to be another thing we'll have to consider, that, you know, if you have a failure and it turns out, oh, it's a, you know, cert manager problem or an Nginx, you know, problem, like, I guess those bugs, I don't know. I assume they're handled by distribution. Like who do we talk to if someone's like, oh yeah, like cert manager is part of the standard GitLab Helm chart installation is failing. I guess that lands with distribution to fix. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot more pieces, and when you actually take either an omnibus package or the Helm chart package, there is a bit more software in than just the components we have that we just have to keep in mind when we're doing this.
Yeah,
and
if I remember, because I was testing this years ago, there is an option to say I'm gonna provide my own cert manager, because as you said, it's a shared thing. And then when you do the chart, you say don't install the cert manager, but use the cert manager annotation.
Yeah.
Because say it's already provided, so it's not it's managed for you, right? So
yeah.
And so I think the distribution's responsibilities there comes into this. So does the configuration generates so the input, does it generates a working configuration according to the documentation, right? So I think that's the stream of code there, right? So if they say this label should just be picked up, and then this is not how it works, then it's an issue, right?
Yeah, and I think that's my what I was hoping, which may be impossible, but what I was hoping is that I wanted to try and run the minimal amount of shared resources as possible for two reasons. One, we have to maintain it ourselves.
Yeah.
And B, it is that full testing experience of everything that whole, because, you know, at the moment, you know, we're going to have releases 3 months old. It's not that big a deal, but when you start to talk, if it ever goes longer, you know, there could be quite a big variance in like the versions of cert manager, like how I didn't want us to inherit those problems. And that's why I was trying to be like, everyone gets their own stuff, even if it's not efficient, because I'd rather just like, you get your own stuff, and you know, if there's a problem, well, it's the one that came with it, so we don't have to worry about it. But if there's technical limitations, which there might be, I haven't had a close look. There's
but in real world, I don't believe in real world cluster people are using our own cert manager.
No, probably not. So because it's probably not. And honestly, it's probably just not a big deal.
They will have one cluster for everything. GitLab plus their own workload. So they will provide, this is kinds of gluing components. So they will have their own cert manager, because otherwise they will rely on GitLab cert manager for their own workload on the cluster. So we are big enough to, we are bigger than this, but there could be someone big enough to say, this is the GitLab cluster, but that is only managed by Helm chart. So it's all about this, which is the omnibus experience on C and G. But everything is
I agree.
Smaller than this will.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'll do is the solution to this problem. I'll just go and install the version of Cert Manager cluster-wide, and I'll just tweak the config so everyone's just using that. And especially for something like this, I'm not particularly worried about it. I would be more worried if it was like things like Nginx and where it start to really getting involved in the software stack. This is just serving certificates, which is a very simple thing. It either works or it doesn't. It either gives you the certificate or it doesn't. We'll know straight away if it's not working. So not an unsolvable problem. I'll probably look at that the next day or two.
Yeah, like I think that makes sense. Like if we can find a kind of divide between the environment and the environment running versus the package that we are releasing, that probably helps. And I mean, I think with pretty much what we've seen, certainly with staging ref, I imagine probably with Get as well, where it's like you can get quite close, but you know, you still need to add some of your own stuff.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yep, makes sense.
So, Graham, there was something coming to my mind when we were mentioning the not the inability to have deployments commit by commit, right? So the fact that they can run in the wrong order. So just random idea. So we could consider because this is the things that we are building is a very powerful tool, right? So we are setting our mindset and saying we're gonna have a release file for each last 3 stable branches and just upgrade that file, and so that it deploys, run QA. So it's one file. But what I'm thinking is we may consider having 2 efforts here, right? So one is creating a temporary one which is just the SHA and the images built from that commit.
Yep.
Have it run QA and everything, and then destroy the environment, and keeping the long-term stable branch. So two deployments, right? So because what we want to be able to do is assessing that commit in isolation is valid.
Sure.
And it works. But on the other hand, you want to provide usable environment for engineers to do manual QA tests or whatever. So these are kind of two different problems.
Yep.
So because if the alternative is having something built in the product, it would probably take a lot of time to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The only thing I'm curious about that, and I'd have to once again go and have a deeper look, is so we already have review apps in the GitLab or GitLab repo. So I'm not sure if you can use them. I guess this is the thing. I don't know if you want to open a merge request to a stable branch, whether you can get a review app for it or not. Like, I know you can for master, but I'm not sure if you can for stable branches. And that would be interesting. If you can, then maybe just leveraging what they've already got is good enough. If you can't, then certainly we could look at seeing maybe we also spin up a completely throwaway environment for each, whatever it is, commit. So, and then we could also do, when you do actually merge the stable branch, also upgrade our long-standing environment to test an upgrade path, as well as we could easily spin up a new one and completely, and then be like, this tests it from zero to being built, to being tested, to being destroyed, as well as the longer standing one, which is testing that more incremental upgrade.
So the testing QA thing is available on the merge request, but not on the stable branches. So that means that it is available, and it's part of the interim solution. So when we were working on this, until we have the release environment work done, how can we verify things? And if I remember correctly, what the agreement now is that it is still going to be a manual job for the simple reason, because it's a job on the merge request itself. It's going to be very intensive in terms of resource, because every time you push something new, you rebase, you just amend something, this will create a new package, run the full QA and everything. So they wanted to say, we can't make this mandatory. If we were using merge trains, it could have been possible to say only runs on the merge train, but we are not. So there's no distinction between the merge result pipeline, because you merge something with any regular commit. So you're pushing something and it creates a new one. So that is for giving you an answer. So as an interim solution, it could just be that you can test in isolation on the merge request. They were also very aware of the flakiness of some of those tests. So
flakiness is actually one of the big concerns about just running package and test on everything. I don't have it to hand, but from the handbook when Myra and I were looking at, it's saying 15% of the tests are known to be flaky. They track them. It's quite a big number. At the moment, that's okay, but the problem will be if every individual developer hits that and has a failure and has to go to quality to ask, the workload for quality is going to be huge. So let me link in. So if there is an agreed thing Alessia mentioned, that is what quality think will be fine for now, but we should figure out where it ties in with this.
So I might be even thinking of a different pipeline on the GitLab repo as well, or child pipeline. They've actually got one called Start Review App that actually spins up an actual review app as well. Is that different to the package and QA stuff, I think, as well?
I think it's different, because package Start Review App doesn't run QA and just give you an environment that you can log into it. That one, I think they tear it down at the end of QA and it runs the QA pipeline.
Right.
So I think for your question there, Graham, about the review app, absolutely. It might be, maybe there's a way we can kind of pull these together so that we make use of some of these existing bits, but the flakiness on the test could be the big challenge here, I think.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the next big integration point. Is like, okay, we have the images, we have them deployed. Now we need to QA. And I've already got a pretty good understanding from what Quality have told me how I could build basically a job that would just run a generic kind of QA suite. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how flaky these are, or just how it all works. We won't really know until we try it.
And it's possible we could combine the stuff that Myra and Snad have been discussing. I mean, maybe we do run a different test suite on the commit,
sure.
and it's smaller and more stable. And then when we tag up the package, we run. It's not as good, but maybe that's also an option, right? So we can certainly. It would probably be good actually going before too long to get a kind of whatever, like the next issue ready, right? So I know Myra was like, here's the interim, but it'd probably be good, including Myra's kind of thoughts, to have the like, here is actually what we ultimately want this to look like. And then we can start, we can get Quality to start thinking about that and see what, I suspect they're going to need to prioritize a project that includes, something, either naming of tests or test suite or flakiness or something to help. I know this quarter they are looking at some of the flakiness, but I don't know how big a project that will be.
And I think part of that as well, which will need to be discussed. So I'm trying to the release environment, like the environments we're building to test, are trying to be as complete as possible. Like I deploying GitLab pages and all of the bits and pieces. So I think that's the other thing which I'm not as sure about with packaging QA. I'm not sure if they do, like packaging QA, I'm not sure if it covers GitLab pages because you need special certificates set up for that and things like that. So we may actually find that we're building this full environment. I'm not doing prefix, and I think that's probably okay. I don't think we should, whatever we end up building, we may find that a test suite that looks fine here now it looks very different here because we are testing more pieces. I mean, I'm deploying things like CAS in the release environments. I don't know if we do that in packaging QA because you've got to install a client agent. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that, because obviously the goal is to make these environments as full as possible. There's no point if you're not like trying to make it as complete as possible. But that does mean bigger test suites, more components, more things that can go wrong. So that could overall affect the failure rate we see as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it'll be a bit of a case of seeing. The good thing is around a patch release is hopefully people are merging stuff and it's not like the day before a security release type of urgency, right? So hopefully if it is a bit slower, we have some time to figure it out.
I was thinking, once again, open to thoughts on this. To start with too, we just set the release environments work like it's going to be in its own isolated child pipeline. So you'll have the normal GitLab pipeline that you'll see on the stable branch, and there'll be like a child pipeline off to anything release environments related, clearly labeled. I was thinking we probably set the strategy for that to allow failures to begin with, maybe to once we build confidence in all the pieces. Obviously, we still got the packaging QA and the backup option there. Like we'll keep using that. Like we'll run them both in parallel. And then once we're confident that we're not seeing problems in the whole release environment process end to end, then we'll actually make it blocking. Minor thing, but that way we can just build because I don't want to like merge it the first day and then all of a sudden we're unable to get a green stable branch because maybe I missed something like this cert manager issue or whatever, right? Like we want to be able to do this for a little bit, like a few weeks, maybe not a few weeks, a little bit of time to build confidence that we're like, oh yeah, these branches are green, we can see this is all working as expected, now we'll make it blocking. And I think that also talks into the policy extension. Whenever this work kind of falls out, we probably will need to do an announcement, make people aware, by the way, we are now doing this part of the process. So when you are merging to stable branches, you might see this is what it is, and these are the 3 parts to it, and here's the guide as to what happens if something goes wrong. If it's a image issue, distribution, if it's deploy us, and if it's a QA issue, you engage Quality as per normal, and that just kind of reiterating that point.
Cool. Makes sense. Great. Just very quickly then to wrap up on collaboration, like, are you getting what you need from collaboration? Anything we can do to improve?
I think we're going well at the moment. I will spin up tomorrow that issue for quality. As I said, I've got the initial piece for I've got initial plan for implementation for the images from distribution. We'll just kind of see how that looks. And that's the only other piece that might be questionable is if we find something and we need to go back to distribution, we might have to start doing some more synchronous engagement or something to be like, okay, we need to sit down and really work together and figure this problem out if we want to keep things moving, kind of thing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much for the demo, Graham, and thanks for the chats. I'll see you all later on.